Peace be upon you. Welcome back to another episode of Successful Ever After.
We are extremely delighted to have you again with us for another successful podcast. I'm Haya.
And I'm Tuba. We are your hosts for this podcast.
If you are joining us for the first time, we welcome you to our sisterhood and to this wonderful podcast.
Just to recap, we have been discussing the commonly asked questions about the religion of peace.
Continuing from our previous podcast, the last question that we had answered was about the miraculous Quran. So now, our first question of today is, how did this latest revelation of Islam start?
The latest revelation of Islam started in Mecca, a city in Arabia, in 610 CE, when Muhammad, at the age of 40, received his first revelation from God through the angel Gabriel. As soon as he began to recite the words he heard from Gabriel, he started to preach the truth that God had revealed to him. He first started to tell his closest members of family and friends. Later, he was asked by God to spread the truth to all people. Initially, Muhammad and his small group of followers suffered bitter persecution, which grew so fierce that in the year 622 CE, God gave him the command to migrate to Medina, a city about 260 miles to the north, where the first Islamic state was established.
Oh, okay, a new city.
Yes, this migration is referred as Hijrah, and this marks the beginning of the Muslim calendar as well. After several years, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his followers were able to return to Mecca, where they forgave their enemies and established Islam definitively. Before the Prophet Muhammad died at the age of 63, the greater part of Arabia was Muslim, and within a century Islam had spread as far as Spain to the west and as far as China to the east.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yes, indeed. It all starts back with the solid and well-grounded belief, which takes us to our next question. What are the 6 articles of faith in Islam?
The 6th article of faith represents the basic set of belief that one must have in order to be considered a Muslim.
Okay.
First pillar is about belief in monotheism, that is, there is only one God and his attributes are unique and cannot be shared with any other being. He is eternal, begets not, nor he is begotten, and nothing is comparable to him.
Interesting.
Second pillar is about belief in angels, who are the spiritual agents of God, and third pillar is the belief in all the original scriptures revealed to his messengers, including revelations given to Moses, David, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon him. Moving towards the fourth pillar, it is belief in all the prophets and messengers of God whom he sent to different people at different times.
So the message of peace reached every corner of the world and every generation?
Yes, of course, people of all generation and nation were given the message, and this message becomes a means for their salvation. This takes us to the fifth pillar, which is belief in the life after death, the day of judgment, the hereafter, eternal paradise and hellfire.
Oh, that's so meaningful.
Last, and the sixth pillar is about belief in the divine decree or destiny, that everything in the universe happens with the God's full knowledge and permission.
Oh wow, that's quite a unique approach and belief. It is very profound and deep, at the same time, very meaningful.
Yes, it is quite something to contemplate about. There is so much happening in this world, but I wonder what and how the hereafter is, especially with regard to our next question, which is, what is the concept of paradise in Islam?
Yes, that's quite an interesting question. The Quran contains many references to an afterlife in the eternal paradise for those who believe and did good deeds. The Quran says, "The parable of the garden which the righteous are promised, beneath it flow rivers, perpetual is the fruits thereof, and the shade therein. Such is the end of the righteous," quoted in the Quran, chapter 13, verse 35.
I'm amazed, such a beautiful description.
It indeed is. Heaven in Islam is described primarily in physical terms as a place with splendid gardens where every wish is immediately fulfilled when asked. Islamic texts describe an immortal life in heaven, which is happy, peaceful, without any hardship or aging or diseases or any negative emotions. Those who dwell in heaven are said to be young, wear costly apparel, partake in exquisite banquets, and recline on couches inlaid with gold or precious stones.
This is so mesmerizing and enchanting.
Yes, and inhabitants will rejoice in the company of their parents, their spouses, and their children. Paradise has many levels, and the highest level is called Firdaus, to which the prophets, the messengers, the truthful ones, the martyrs, and other pious people will go. It has been said that the lowest level of heaven is 100 times better than the greatest life on earth. Palaces are built in paradise by angels using solid gold for the occupants.
I can't even imagine, the description is so captivating.
It is surely the most alluring and enrapturing picture depicted by the description of the heaven in the Quran and the Hadith, which are the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Yes, I am completely amazed by it.
But as mentioned, it is for those who believe and the worshippers of the one true God, the creator of the universe. We often hear about the 5 basic pillars of worship. Could you elaborate a little about what are the 5 pillars of worship in Islam?
Sure, I will love to. In the Quran, faith is linked to doing righteous deeds. Thus, it is not enough for a Muslim just to have faith. The believer has to put his or her faith into practice as well. There are 5 pillars of worship, and one must undertake these acts of worship with the best efforts in order to be a true Muslim. First and foremost is Shahada, or testimony of the oneness of God and prophethood of Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Okay.
Second is Salah, or formal obligatory prayers which are performed 5 times a day to link up with the Creator and nourish the soul.
Oh, alright. But how many times do Muslims pray in a day?
Good question. Muslims pray 5 times a day. The prayers are offered at dawn, at noon, at about late to mid-afternoon, immediately after sunset, and at nightfall, reflecting the rhythms of the entire day.
Okay.
Yes. Third is the zakah, or compulsory charity, which is about 2.5% of one's annual saving or accumulated wealth to be given to the needy for purification and growth of our wealth and soul.
Okay.
Fourth is Saum, or fasting during the daylight hours of the month of Ramadan for self-purification, self-control, and getting nearness to God.
Okay, how is a Muslim fast observed?
Let me tell you, fasting means abstaining from food, drink, and intimate relations with his spouse during the daylight time, and also avoiding all evils and sin throughout. However, those who are unable to fast, like a traveler or a sick person, are permitted not to fast and make it up later.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and the 5th pillar is Hajj, or pilgrimage to Makkah, at least once in a lifetime for those who are physically and financially able to perform it. The rites of Hajj are based on the events that took place during the time of Prophet Abraham. Do you know that Prophet Abraham and his first son Ishmael rebuilt Kaaba in Makkah, which used to be called Bakka? This was the first house of worship on the earth. The Old Testament also make a reference to believers visiting the house of God at the valley of Bakka.
That's quite interesting. It surely gives an insight to how the Muslims worship God. This seems to be so liberating just by getting to know about it.
Yes, knowledge is liberating and gives us a better understanding of each other as human beings. So now I would like to ask the next question. What is the role of knowledge in Islam?
It's interesting that you asked that question because Islam attaches great importance to knowledge. When the Quran began to be revealed, the first word was read or recite. God says in the Quran, "Read in the name of your Lord who has created. He has created man from a clot. Read, and your Lord is the most generous, who has taught man by the pen. He has taught man that which he knew not." Quoted in the Quran in chapter 96, verses 1 to 5.
Oh, I'm surprised. It is given in the Quran itself.
Yes, knowledge is thus the starting point of every human endeavor in Islam. God created humans and provided them with the tools for acquiring knowledge. God also mentions in the Quran in verse 78, chapter 16, And Allah has brought you out from the wombs of your mothers while you know nothing, and He gave you hearing, sight, and hearts that you might give thanks to Allah. A knowledgeable person is accorded greater respect in many prophetic narrations. Because of the importance of knowledge, Allah commanded His messenger to seek more of it. Muslims are taught by Allah in the Quran and say, "My Lord, increase me in knowledge." This is quoted in the Quran in chapter 20 and verse 114.
Okay.
The Prophet made seeking knowledge an obligation upon every Muslim. He also said that seeking knowledge is a way leading to paradise. We learn from one of his sayings. He said, "Whoever follows a path in the pursuit of knowledge, Allah will make a path to paradise easy for him."
That's fascinating.
Yes, no other religion ever went so far in asserting the dominance of reason and learning above all other manifestations of human life. This is why history traces major scientific and technological developments in the Muslim world between the 7th and the 17th centuries, when at that time the West was immersed in the Dark Ages.
I'm truly amazed by this information, how Islam places the importance of knowledge and gives everyone the right to seek knowledge.
Yes, there's so much more still to explore. What we have discussed does not even amount to a single drop from the ocean of knowledge.
That's true. It brings about an everlasting success. Success in this life and a life to come.
More like successful ever after?
Yes.
I thank and appreciate all our listeners for joining us for this episode of Successful Ever After.
And I would like to invite you all to join us again for our upcoming episodes where we discuss and answer more frequently asked questions about Islam.
See you soon!